Washington U.S. Rep. Dan Crenshaw is pushing legislation to further crack down on narcotics cartels because, as every American knows, narcotics cartels will be nothing without illegal immigration. This bill will be so popular that no one won't like it better than the other party. That's right. This may be the worst bipartisan bill ever. The cartels will be shocked to hear that they're at war. That sure is a big and scary word. Crenshaw's bill comes less than 2 weeks after U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Texas, Ken Melson, stepped down from his position, despite wanting to stay on. Crenshaw wants people caught smuggling narcotics from the border to face an automatic life in prison. If born in the U.S., you'll lose citizenship after being convicted of federal crimes. Or will you? But before starting this video, please subscribe to our channel and press that bell icon to get all the latest updates. We'll make more videos on interesting topics, so if you want to watch them, subscribe. Now let's get started. Alcohol, narcotics, and synthetic marijuana come from all over the world. Chemicals are made in China, plants are grown in Afghanistan, and homemade stimulants are made in secret labs in the U.S. The majority of narcotics, both illegal and legal, are used by Americans. However, most of these narcotics are not made in the United States. Central and Southern American narcotics cartels are the ones who bring illegal narcotics into the U.S. through the southern border. The dangerous Sinaloa cartel is based in Mexico, and is well known because its longtime leader, El Chapo, was recently caught and jailed. The Sinaloa cartel is known for its close ties to the Mexican federal police and military. The cartel is known for torturing and deceased couriers who lose their packages, don't deliver quite on time, or get in the way of their business. They also keep a tight and fierce grip on how the media portrays them, letting only a few reporters on guided tours. The organization started smuggling emeralds and was based in Colombia, one of the top places narcotics is grown. When Pablo Escobar took control of the cartel, the focus shifted to narcotics, mainly narcotics, but also some marijuana. The group was known for sending narcotics from South America to Florida on private planes. More and more people from the United States were getting hooked on narcotics. After the 1990s, many members of the Medellin cartel either turned themselves in or were taken out. Colombian police deceased Escobar, or killed him. It's one of the oldest Mexican cartels, and its roots can be found on several continents. Their leader, Juan Jesus Guerrero Chapa, moved to a suburb of Dallas, Texas to get away from other gangs in Mexico who were after him. But in 2013, people were hired to kill him outside of his home. The leader of the Gulf Cartel before 2007 was sent to prison for 25 years after being sent to the U.S. This criminal group started as a group of 31 former Mexican Special Forces operatives who quit military and joined the Gulf Cartel as their private militia. Since then, the Zetas have grown into an organization that sells narcotics, keeps cities and towns safe, and cleanses money. This cartel can compete with Sinaloa's size and power. Juarez has bought tons of illegal narcotics into the U.S., and its first leader, Carrillo Fuentes, died in 1997 after undergoing plastic surgery to hide from assassins. Others who took control of Juarez were thrown out within months or years. This led to a war in 2004 between Juarez and other cartels, which destroyed Mexico. Crenshaw's bill would allow more extended custody of migrants, minors, and mandate DNA testing of families. Representative Dan Crenshaw, a Republican from Texas, is proposing legislation extending the amount of time that minors who illegally enter the United States can be held in custody, and requires DNA testing of migrant families. The goal of this legislation is to prevent adults from using children as a means to enter the United States more quickly. This results in a situation where adults who came at the border unlawfully with children are also let into the United States. However, the adults would not be released if they arrived at the border alone. Consequently, immigration conservatives and border officials are worried that this encourages unaccompanied minors and migrant family units to enter the United States illegally. It also has generated worries regarding the exploitation of children, since migrants have always been known to claim that they're connected to children to enter the United States. With the lopsided incentives in our current immigration regime, children are being exploited to gain an unfair advantage. It's terrible for kids and contributes to the problem at the border. Therefore, something needs to give. For this reason, I propose legislation to revise the Flores Agreement, Crenshaw declared in a press release. Crenshaw has introduced legislation that would alter the TVPRA to increase maximum detention. The bill would also mandate DNA testing for families to verify kinship and reduce instances of child abuse. Republican Dan Crenshaw is proposing legislation to revise the Flores Agreement that will allow extended custody of migrant minors and mandatory DNA testing for families. Do you think that this bill is going to help fight off the cartels? Let us know in the comment section. It would also require adults falsely claiming family ties to a child to be reported to the appropriate authorities for prosecution. It would also prohibit individuals from serving as sponsors and for unaccompanied alien children if they're in the country illegally, or unrelated, or have certain criminal convictions. Last but not least, the proposed legislation would establish rules for the adult prosecution of adolescents who are members of gangs. Crenshaw detailed how his measure would require DNA testing for all family units crossing the border, stop criminals from becoming legal guardians of unaccompanied minors, and discourage parents from sending their young children alone on the risky voyage to the U.S. DNA testing would be mandatory for all the families crossing the border if my bill passes. The proposal is the most recent piece of legislation that the Texas Congressman has put up to revamp the border and the asylum system to tackle the ongoing problem at the southern border. The legislation that he proposed to get rid of the phase of immigration law that allows asylum claims to be filed at the southern border to be lodged between ports of entry and that would also exclude people who have entered the country illegally, was introduced by him the previous week. Migrants can file asylum claims at embassies and consulates in Mexico and other countries worldwide if this legislation is passed, since it'll permit the establishment of designated asylum offices overseas. The bill's provision states that immigrants must submit their asylum requests in the foreign country where they're currently residing if that country already has an office for this purpose. As a direct response to the crisis at the southern border, Representative Dan Crenshaw from the state of Texas plans to introduce legislation that would significantly increase the federal penalties for those involved in Mexican cartels. The legislation would also specifically target these cartels' enormous financial power. In a statement, Crenshaw claimed that by smuggling people and narcotics into the country, Mexican narcotics cartels are undermining the law of rule in our country. To combat transnational criminal organizations involved in narcotics smuggling and illegal immigrants into the United States through the southern border, the Declaring War on the Cartels Act would add new wording to the United States Code that currently targets criminal street gangs. Current U.S. code provisions are aimed squarely at criminal street gangs. If this were proposed to become law, members of criminal organizations who engage in illegal activities like narcotics trafficking, violence, fraud, human smuggling, or illegal immigration would face a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. It would also make it possible to revoke naturalized citizenship and green cards from anybody found guilty of engaging in such operations and bar cartel members and their families from entering the country. Also, it would use already existing federal powers to prevent cartel organizations from using financial institutions in the United States. It would allow the seizure of assets in a cartel fund to increase funding for law enforcement to go after cartels. The specific amount would go into the DHS agencies like CBP and ICE, while DEA would receive a small amount. The proposal would also make it possible to impose sanctions on individuals who can assist cartels and suspend financial assistance to nations that provide assistance or don't adequately prohibit cartel activity. My bill goes after the cartels and their members by increasing federal criminal penalties, bypassing liberal big city district attorneys and prosecutors, and hitting the cartel where it matters most, their bank accounts. Crenshaw stated, "My legislation increases federal criminal penalties against cartels and their members. I designed this bill with the intent of using unique measures, such as denaturalization and fines against governments that enable or permit cartels to operate to discourage individual support and corruption." I stated in the bill summary, "Cartels need to be taken seriously, and we need to take action against them in the same manner that we take action against terrorist organizations. This is the only way to succeed," he continued. This legislation is just one of the several that a lawmaker from Texas has proposed to address the problem that is developed at the southern border. He's also proposed legislation that would make it possible to detain migrant children for extended periods, prohibit filing asylum claims between ports of entry, and increase the number of ICE prosecutors to deal with the case backlog in the immigration system. The measure was enacted only a few days after the CBP reported that there have been over 230,000 encounters with migrants in October. This number is considered the highest October total in the history of the DHS. More than 2.3 million encounters with migrants were reported, previously record-breaking with 1.7 million encounters. Also, the United States has been battling a fentanyl problem primarily brought on by Mexican cartels, smuggling the substance across the country's land border. Although fentanyl is 100 times more potent than morphine, a fatal dose can be achieved with as little as 2 milligrams. Republicans have been highly critical of the Biden administration's decision to weaken interior enforcement and various border security measures implemented during the Trump administration. The problem, on the other hand, has been blamed by the administration of Vice President Joe Biden on root causes such as murder, poverty, and corruption in Central America, despite the administration's frequent assertions that the border is. So that's it for today's video. If you like this video, click the like and the bell buttons, and we're going to have another video coming for you soon. Take care until then.